Assalamu alaikum. So let's continue with the remaining portion of our topic on fluid dynamics. So now let's begin with a new topic, hydraulic grade line and energy line. I would like to explain that with the help of this figure, in which we have a pipe of varying diameter from section A to section B. Its diameter increases, and we have connected this vertical tube, which is called piezometer tube, and a right angle bend tube, the pitot tube, at both the sections. As we know, the rise of liquid in piezometer tube represents the pressure head from the center of the pipe, and the pitot tube, it represents the total energy head. So take this as our datum, any reference plane, and from that datum till the center of pipe, this is called elevation head ZA, and till section B it will be ZB. Then from the center of the pipe till the rise of liquid in piezometer tube represents the pressure head at that point, so it is PA over gamma. Similarly at section B it is PB over gamma. Now if you join the liquid level in the piezometer tube, you will get hydraulic grade line. So hydraulic grade line, it actually represents static head, that is the sum of pressure head and elevation head. Now, as we know that pitot tube gives the total head, which is a summation of all the three heads, and we are considering ideal fluid. For an ideal fluid, the sum of energy should remain constant. According to Bernoulli's, the sum of energy head is constant at two sections. So ideal energy line will be horizontal, passing through the level of liquid in pitot tube. And as you can also see, the hydraulic grade line represents the static head. So the difference of energy line and hydraulic grade line, this actually represents the velocity head. Now if you look at the figure, the shape of this hydraulic grade line, this is because as the diameter of pipe gradually increases, so its velocity has gradually reduced. So this is also evident since the VA square over 2G is greater than VB square over 2G. So the shape of hydraulic grade line, this actually depends on the change in the diameter of the pipe. So now let's reinforce a concept which we have just learned about hydraulic grid line and energy line with the help of some hydraulic system like the one shown in the figure, in which we have a reservoir. This is the wall of the reservoir, and at the bottom we have connected a pipe whose profile along the length is shown. From point B to C to D, the elevation increases and then it drops in elevation, and on the downstream side it is connected to another reservoir at point E. Now let's discuss the energy possessed by the particles at point A. As we know, there are three forms of energies: potential energy, kinetic energy, and pressure energy. So pressure at point A is atmospheric pressure. As we consider the gauge pressure, so it is taken as 0, and the velocity of particle on the water surface is also negligible. So mainly the energy possessed is the potential energy. Now the particles, upon entering the pipe, their energy changes from potential energy to pressure energy and kinetic energy. Now if the outlet at point E is closed, so it is static. If we have a piezometer connected at point B, so liquid must rise till point M, thus representing that the total energy possessed by the particle at point B is the elevation head Z and pressure head P over gamma, which will be equal to Bm. But because the outlet at point E is open, so it will also have some portion of velocity head, V square over 2G. If you look at the shape of the hydraulic grade line over here, this actually represents a change of energy. It accommodates for the energy change taken place of the particle being present in the reservoir and then entering the pipe. So we have three piezometer tubes connected at point B, D, and then over here. So as we know, if we join the level of liquid in piezometer tube, we will get hydraulic grade line. So from here, we will have the hydraulic grid line which will join to point A. Now at point B, since the pipe is below the hydraulic grid line, so this means the pressure is P over gamma. And at point C, the hydraulic grid line passes through the pipe, so this means the pressure head would be 0. Simply, if you consider that if you have the shape of the hydraulic grid line and if you connect the piezometer tube at point C, so there won't be any rise. You can see that. So this indicates that the pressure head at point C is 0, and at point D it is higher than the hydraulic grid line. So this actually indicates that the pressure at point D is negative, that is vacuum pressure equal to Dn. Again, the pressure is increasing, and at point C it is 0, and then afterwards it increases to a positive pressure till over here. Now, ideally, for an ideal energy line, it should be horizontal, as the one shown over here with the dashed lines. This is ideal energy line, but actually, the energy line will always be lowered. That is because of the friction losses, and it will be lowered by a value, a magnitude HL, which is known as head loss. The energy line will follow the shape of the hydraulic grid line, and the difference between them would be equal to the velocity head, v square over 2g. Now let's look at this hydraulic system in which we have a taper duct connecting two reservoirs on the upstream and downstream side, and this pipe is having varying diameter. First it gradually reduces and then it increases. We have also connected 5 piezometer tubes at different intervals, and this is the direction of flow. So energy line should be horizontal, starting from the initial energy of the particle processed by it, but the energy line would drop because of the energy losses due to friction, and which are represented with this head loss HL. So this will be the actual energy line. Starting from the particle processing energy over here on the water surface, since we are actually not sure that how would the energy transformation take place, they have used a dashed line to represent the connection of the hydraulic grid line and energy line with the water surface. So as we know, the rise of liquid in piezometer tube, it represents the hydraulic grid line. So simply joining the shape would be joining all the levels of liquid in piezometer tube, we will get this HGL hydraulic grid line. And the difference of energy line and hydraulic grid line, this is actually the velocity head, v square over 2g. Now let's discuss the shape of the hydraulic grid line. Since if you look over here, the diameter decreases. So diameter has decreased, so velocity has to be increased. So velocity head is increased. So from the first piezometer to second piezometer, the velocity head has increased. Now, if you look to the other end, as the diameter increases, so velocity decreases. So velocity head also decreases. And as this change is gradual, so the velocity head gradually decreases and pressure has increased. This is the explanation. You can read it yourself. Now, if you look at this figure, in which two pipes of different diameter, they are connected to some reservoir, and two piezometer tubes are also connected to them. So this lower line, this is actually hydraulic grid line, and the above one is the energy grid line. Energy grid line generally follow the same shape as at a hydraulic grid line, and the difference is their velocity head. As the diameter of this pipe, the first pipe is lesser as compared to the other one, so this velocity head would be greater. So this is the reason that the gap of energy line and hydraulic grid line is greater over here as compared to over here. And the change of shape of the hydraulic grid line over here, this is actually, it could be explained because the streamline, they were flowing full in this smaller diameter pipe, and upon entering the larger pipe they would not directly shift themselves to fill it completely. There would be some void created at the junction at this corner, so that and so the energy change would be actually gradual. So this region, this actually explains the energy change which will be occurring over here. And if you look at the this side, you could just simply ignore it and join the hydraulic grid line with the energy line at the same point. That is also reasonably true. Now, if you look at this figure, we have a pipe connected to a reservoir, and a pitot tube and a piezometric tube are connected to it. This is the direction of flow, and upon entering the outlet, the water is free into the atmosphere. So it is actually known as jet. So water is freed into the air in the form of jet. So from the datum, as we know, the energy possessed by the particle on the water surface is the potential energy, which is given by Z1, and the energy line which should be horizontal starting from the water surface, it will actually drop by the amount equal to head loss HL. And this line, this is actually the energy grid line or energy line shape, and the lower one is the hydraulic grid line, and the difference is equal to the velocity head with the alpha, which accounts for the velocity variation of different in different particles. So hydraulic grid line actually represents pressure head from the center of the pipe at any point. So it is P2 over gamma. And now the one thing to be noted over here, for the jet, as as a jet is open to atmosphere, so the pressure is atmospheric pressure. As we are measuring gauge pressure, so we take it equal to 0. So all the energy possessed by jet is the velocity or kinetic energy. I believe you can do this figure by yourself, and we can discuss it in our question answer session if anything is ambiguous. Now let's see the contribution of pump in hydraulic system. As you're already familiar with the working principle of pump, that is, it converts the electrical energy to mechanical energy and from mechanical energy to hydraulic energy. So basically, pump imparts energy into the system. It is adding to the hydraulic energy of the water. So if you look at this figure, uh, this line, it is an energy line, the solid line, and dashed line is a hydraulic grid line. So for the first pipe, the energy line a little bit downward because of the friction losses, and upon reaching the center line of the pump, we can represent the rise in the energy imparted by the pump. So the energy which is added by the pump, it is given by HP, and this abrupt rise, this actually the equal to HP, and then again the energy grid line, it continues a little bit downward because of the friction losses. In this system, we have a reservoir. This is the water surface of reservoir having atmospheric pressure. So gauge pressure is 0, and from any datum, the elevation to water surface is L. Then at the bottom of the reservoir, we have a pipe connected to which a valve is attached. Whenever there are any fittings attached to the pipe like valve, diffuser, nozzle, or any fitting used to connect pipes of different diameter, they actually they are the source of more loss in the system. After which we have attached a piezometer tube. The rise of liquid in piezometer tube will represent the pressure head. And then there is a pump attached. This pump is going to add the energy into the system. That energy rise is shown over here. You could also show the energy rise from the center of the pump in the form of a vertical line, or you can represent it like this, the gradual rise and inclined line. This is also fine. Then we have a piezometer tube. Then there is a nozzle. Nozzle is having a small part region which gradually reduces in diameter in order to increase the velocity. Then there is another piezometer tube, and then a turbine. The function of turbine is opposite to that of pump. It converts the hydraulic energy into mechanical energy, and then the mechanical energy that is given to a generator to produce electricity. Then at the bottom of the turbine we have a duct which carry the water, and then that water is released into the air. So again the pressure will be atmospheric pressure, so gauge pressure is 0, and that jet will be flowing with velocity. So I would prefer all of you to read all this diagram and draw the energy line and hydraulic grid line by yourself, and we can discuss your queries in our online session. Now let's discuss vortex flow, which is defined as the flow of a fluid along a curved path or the flow of a rotating mass of fluid. The examples are the whirlpool of water formed by the rotating mass of the fluid, or the swirls formed by injecting dyes into the air. Following are the properties of vortex flow. The whole fluid mass rotates about an axis, and this circular motion of fluid is actually streamline, which indicates that the velocity at any point along the streamline will be tangential to it. So the radial component of velocity is 0. There are two types of vortex flow: forced vortex flow and free vortex flow. Let's see the difference between free and forced vortex flow. Forced vortex flow is rotational type of flow. That means when particles moving along the circular path, they are rotating about their own axis. While free vortex flow is irrotational flow. You can also understand it from the figure below. Here the arrowhead shows the direction or orientation of the particle, and as the particle they move in circular motion, the arrowhead direction changes, which indicates that they are rotating about their own axis. While over here in free vortex flow, the arrowhead direction, it remains constant as moving in circular path, so it is irrotational flow. In forced vortex flow, basically an external torque is required to cause motion in the fluid particle. For example, in washing machine, when you switch it on, the motor rotates the drum, and which eventually rotates the liquid which is present inside the drum. So an external torque is required which is causing motion of the liquid. As it depends upon the externally applied rotation or torque or motion, so the angular velocity is constant. And as we know, V is equal to R omega, where R is a radius, and we know for the vortex flow is a streamline flow and velocity is tangential velocity. So V theta is tangential velocity. So in case of forced vortex flow, the angular velocity is constant, which is equal to V theta over R. While in free vortex flow, the motion is because of some internal action. The fluid rotates in circular path by virtue of some rotation previously imparted to it. There is no expenditure of energy from any outside source, and the angular velocity is increasing, and the tangential velocity is inversely proportional to radius. So in free vortex flow, V theta into R is constant. So you have to remember this relationship. For forced vortex flow, V theta over R is constant, while for free vortex flow, V theta into R is constant. In forced vortex flow, tangential velocity is directly proportional to radius. That means with the increase of radius, the tangential velocity is increasing. So the outermost circle will have the highest velocity. While in case of free vortex flow, with the increase of radius, the velocity it reduces in magnitude because tangential velocity is inversely proportional to radius. So basically the innermost circle will have maximum velocity in free vortex flow. Some common examples for forced vortex flow includes the rotation of liquid within a centrifugal pump or of gas in a centrifugal compressor. And some examples for free vortex flow are whirlpool in river, the rotary flow that often arises in a shallow vessels when liquid flows out through a hole in the bottom, as is often seen when water empties from a bathtub, the flow in a centrifugal pump case just outside the impeller, and in a turbine case as the water approaches the guide vanes. As no energy is imparted to the fluid, and if we ignore the friction, the sum of energy head remains constant in free vortex flow. So we can basically use Bernoulli's equation in free vortex flow. Now, in order to determine the expression for force and free vortex flow, we first have to find out the pressure equation for a fluid flow in a curved path. For that, consider an element of fluid moving in horizontal plane in a curved path of radius r. As you know that this fluid flow in a curved path is a streamlined flow, so velocity will be tangential to it. So velocity is v, and the cross section area of the element is dA, and the thickness is dr. So pressure, let's suppose that the pressure increases with the increase of radius. So pressure on this face, which is closer to the center, is P, and it will be perpendicular to the area and directed into the area. So with the increase of the radius, the pressure increases by dP, and it is directed into the area, and it is opposite to the direction of that of P. As you know that the motion is in circular path, so centrifugal force will be acting, and centrifugal force is given by mv square over r, and it will be acted in the direction away from the center. So let's write pressure equation. We are taking the direction of force away from center as positive. So let's convert this pressure to pressure force. So multiply it by the area dA. So this this pressure force is PdA. It is taken, this direction taken as positive. So plus PdA. Now consider the force on this area. So it is in opposite direction. So minus P plus dP into area dA. And the centrifugal force, it is acting away from the center. So plus m mass is density into volume, rho volume is dA cross section area into the thickness dr, v square over r. Now if you simplify, open up these brackets, you can see PdA cancel out, plus minus, and if you rearrange the expression, further simplify, you get dV over dr is equal to rho v square over r. As dP over dr is positive, so the pressure increases with the increase of radius. So initially what we assumed is correct. Had this been negative, so that would actually reverse the initial assumption. As we have already studied the hydrostatic law, which states that the change of pressure with change of elevation depends upon the specific weight of the liquid, and that is dP over dz is equal to minus rho g. That is, with the increase of elevation, as we go upwards, the pressure reduces by minus rho g. Now in a circular motion, the pressure variation would take place with the change of radius and with the change of elevation. So we need to consider the pressure variation with respect to both the radius and elevation. So combining both the expressions, the total change in pressure dP, it will be partially because of the radius and partially because of the elevation. So the change because of the radius is written as partial P over partial R into dr, and change because of elevation is partial P over partial Z into dz. Now substituting the expression which we have just formed for partial P over partial R, so dP is equal to rho v square over R into dr, and partial P over partial Z is minus rho G. So minus rho G dZ. So this is the equation for variation of pressure of a rotating fluid in any plane. Let's derive the equation for force vortex flow. For that, consider this diagram in which the vertical cylinder, it is linked with a shaft in the below, and the shaft, it rotates with an angular velocity omega. The water surface, which was initially horizontal, upon rotation it will change in the form of a parabola, and we can compute the angular velocity by using this relationship. Omega is 2 pi n over 60, where n is the number of revolutions in rpm. As we know, velocity, it varies directly with radius, and that v is equal to r omega. We are going to write the pressure equation which we have just formed. dP is rho v square over r dr minus rho g dz. So replace v square by omega square r square, and you will get this expression: dP is equal to rho omega square r dr minus rho g dz. Now integrate this expression and apply the limits between two radius r1 and r2. So integral dP is p2 minus p1 after applying the limits, and integral rho omega square r dr, taking rho omega square outside of the integral. So integral r dr is r square by 2. Applying the limits from r2 to r1, we get r2 square minus r1 square, and then minus, taking rho g outside, integral dz is z. So applying the limits from z2 to z1, so brackets z2 minus z1. So now replacing omega by omega square r2 square is actually v2 square, and omega square r1 square is actually v1 square. So now simplifying, so the expression which we have just determined, if we take 2 points 1 and 2, so the distance from this vertical axis till that point is r1, and from any reference, the elevation till point 1 is z1. Similarly, for the second point, it is r2 and z2. Now in order to simplify the expression, we are going to consider these points to lie on the water surface. So as they are on water surface, so they have atmospheric pressure. So the change of pressure P2 minus P1 is 0. So the above equation, it can be rewritten like this. And if you rearrange it by taking minus rho g, z2 minus z1 to the other side, and then divide both the terms by rho g, further simplifying, you will get z2 minus z1 is equal to 1 over 2g into v2 square minus v1 square. So z2 minus z1 is actually, you can say, that elevation change between the 2 points. So it could be equated equal to z, and if we take the first point on the vertical axis, like over here, so when it is on the vertical axis, so radius is 0, so velocity is also 0, since v is equal to r omega. So v1 is equal to 0, so we get z equal to v2 square over 2g. So this is an important relationship which we are going to use as well. Thus z varies with the square of r, because v is r omega, so you can also write it like r2 square omega square. Since it is an expression of a parabola, this means that the free surface of liquid is a parabolite. Now let's consider a closed cylindrical vessel case when the cylinder has a top lid over it, and when it is rotated, it is not necessary that the radius of the parabola will meet the radius of the cylinder. Like it could be this case as well, when the radius of the parabola formed is also unknown. Then this equation, that z is equal to omega square r square over 2g, in that we have two unknowns, z and r, so we need another expression to be formed in order to solve. So for that, we are going to make use of this, that the volume of air before rotation is equal to volume of air after rotation. So volume of air before rotation is simply the volume of the closed vessel minus the volume of this water contained in the vessel. and the volume of air after rotation is equal to the volume of paraboloid formed, which could be computed using this relationship pi r square over 2 into z. Now let's see equation for free vortex flow. As we know, for free vortex flow, V into R is constant. So let's say that V into R is equal to C. So V is C over R. Now we have to again substitute the value of V in the equation of the change in pressure, which we have computed earlier, that dP is equal to rho V square over R dr minus rho G dz. Now replace V by C over R. As C is constant, so we could actually be able to take it outside of the integral. So dP is equal to rho C square over R cube dr minus rho G dz. Now uh, integrating the equation for points 1 and 2. So integral dP is P2 minus P1, and integral rho C square over R cube dr. Take rho C square outside, and then taking the integral, it is integral r minus 3 dr. So it is minus 1 over 2, and then applying the limits, in brackets it is 1 over r2 square minus 1 over r1 square, then minus integral rho g dz. Take rho g outside of the integral, so integral dz is z, applying the limits, so z2 minus z1. Now you can see uh, c square over r2 square is basically v2 square, and c square over r1 square is basically v1 square. So if you rearrange the expression and divide both side by rho g, and then simply rearrange it in such form that take elevation head, kinetic head, and pressure head to one side for one section, and then just rearranging, you will get this form, and this basically indicates that Bernoulli's equation is valid for free vortex flow.